What would you do if the person you loved most in the world whispered a secret so terrifying it forced the man you buried to claw his way back out? This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about erasure. What's up, everyone? The story you're about to hear is a tough one. It's about the lines we cross for the people we love. If you've ever trusted someone and found out it was the biggest mistake of your life, you'll understand this. Stick with me to the end. I think the ending will surprise you. And if stories about justice, no matter how hard fought, are your thing, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It really helps the channel. Now let's get into it. The hotel room wasn't just quiet, it was hollow. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe but swallows. It was a vacuum, and in the center of it, I was just waiting. The low, constant hum of the mini-fridge was the only sound, a mechanical heartbeat in the sterile dark. A weak bulb above the desk flickered once, a tiny failing star. The air conditioner clicked on with a sound like a bone snapping, a reminder that I was still awake, still here, still alone. I was 700 miles from home, drinking cheap whiskey from a plastic cup and staring at a muted infomercial for tactical gear. My body was in that room, but my mind was somewhere else, everywhere else. And then the phone rang. The screen lit up the darkness. Lily, my daughter. She never called this late. A cold finger traced its way down my spine. My thumb hovered over the screen. On the third ring, I answered. Daddy. Her voice was a shattered thing, a whisper soaked in tears. Daddy, he hit me again. Jason said if I told you, he'd come for you next. The world didn't slow down. It stopped. Completely. The air in my lungs turned to stone. My little girl, my 8-year-old, who still needed a step stool to reach the kitchen sink, was crying so hard she was choking on it. Where's Mom? I finally managed, my voice a stranger's. There was no answer, just a ragged, wet gasp. Then her voice muffled, as if she was speaking into her pillow. She's not here. He's yelling in the kitchen. I'm in the closet. I forced my voice to be calm, a flat, steady lake over a bottomless chasm. Okay, baby, okay. I need you to lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. You understand me? Anyone. A loud sniffle, a whisper. Yes. And then I heard it. A man's voice, loud, brutal, bleeding through the phone. You tell your old man he's next. The line went dead. I stared at the black screen. For a full 10 seconds, I forgot how to breathe. The plastic cup in my hand cracked, whiskey soaking into the cheap carpet. The man I had worked so hard to bury, the calm, quiet civilian man, was gone. In his place was nothing but a cold, terrifying void. This wasn't anger. Anger is hot. This was absolute zero. 3 steps to the bathroom. I didn't look at my reflection. I went straight to the mirror, pried it open. Behind it, a false panel. Behind the panel, a matte black case glued to the wall. Inside wasn't a shaving kit. It was a threaded barrel and a suppressor. My fingers brushed against the cold, oiled metal. A memory, a promise I'd made to myself. A line I swore I'd never cross again. But when your child is whispering for help from a locked closet, you don't call a lawyer. You called in the war. I pulled a burn phone from my boot, a relic from another life. Powered it on. The glow was alien in the hotel light. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 8 years. 1 ring. 2. A voice answered, gravel and smoke. You breathin'? I need wheels and a shadow in the air. 2 hours. A pause. Name. Jason. Another longer pause. You're coming back to the world? I said nothing. Intersection of 5th and Maple. Don't be late. The line went dead.
I stared at the mirror then. The man staring back wasn't the husband my wife had left. It wasn't the man she'd described in court, too hardened, too dangerous, a man whose past made him unfit for bedtime stories and homework. That man was gone. The man in the mirror was the one who existed before, the one I'd sworn to leave in the ground.
I packed fast. Only what would slide through a scanner without a second glance. The rest was waiting for me. At the airport, I was a ghost. I didn't speak to the taxi driver, the woman at the check-in counter, the flight attendant. I was a vessel, empty of everything but purpose. He was already in the window seat, 3C, a worn leather jacket, a thin scar running from his ear to his jawline. He looked like he'd walked out of a war crimes tribunal and put on a suit. He didn't smile. He just slid a boarding pass across the empty seat between us. A new name. "Still a fan of Redback?" he asked, his voice low. I didn't blink. He nodded, leaned back, and closed his eyes as if this was just another red-eye to Dallas. But I wasn't flying to Dallas. I was flying home. And I wasn't coming back alone. The key turned in the lock of my own house, but I didn't wait for the door to open. I pushed inside, moving like I still belonged there. The hinges groaned a familiar, unfriendly greeting. Natalie looked up from the kitchen island with a glass of white wine in her hand. She didn't look surprised. She looked inconvenienced. A tight, thin smile stretched across her face. "Liam, you didn't say you were coming." "I didn't know I was," I said, dropping my bag by the coat rack I'd built 2 Christmases ago. That's when the real surprise flickered in her eyes. She blinked twice, straightened up, wiped her hands on a dish towel. She came toward me with that hug, the one that starts and ends in the same second. I didn't raise my arms. And then I saw him, Jason, sprawled on my couch, in my shoes, holding the TV remote like he'd earned it. His shirt was half unbuttoned, a bottle of beer leaving a wet ring on one of my old coasters. He raised the bottle in a mock toast. "Hey man, didn't know you were back in town." I looked at him like he was a smudge on the window. "I didn't know I was." He smiled anyway. A mistake. But before I could move, I saw her. A flash of movement down the hall. Bare feet, pink pajamas with a missing button, one sock sliding halfway off. Lily. She ran to me, and I dropped to my knees, catching her, pulling her into me so tightly I thought I might memorize her weight, her shape, all over again. She was trembling, and it wasn't from the cold. "It's okay," I whispered into her hair. I'm here. I'm here now." She didn't speak, just held on tighter. Behind me, I heard the clink of glass. Natalie was pouring more wine she hadn't earned. I stood up, Lily on my hip. I smiled. It felt like cracking ice. "Thought I'd work remote for a few days. Surprise Lily. Be a family." Natalie nodded, too fast. "Of course, I just would have liked a heads up. I'd have cleaned up." "I can help," I offered. Her lips pressed into a tight line, a defense ready to be mounted. Dinner was takeout. Jason stayed, claiming he was helping with the garbage disposal. He sat at my cable like he belonged there. I didn't blink. I didn't object. I asked him about his work, pretending I already knew about the falsified invoices, the garage full of parts that never appeared on any manifest. When Lily was asleep, I offered to take the trash out. Jason smirked. "Playing homeowner, are we?" I took his boots from by the door. In one, I placed a small, black, magnetic tracker no bigger than a thumbnail. I fixed it deep inside the lining, a silent passenger, before placing them back neatly by the garage. Inside, Natalie was pretending to fold laundry. She didn't ask what took so long. I didn't offer. That night, I waited for the house to fall still. 1:47 a.m. Natalie was asleep, curled on her edge of the bed. I moved through the darkness I knew better than the back of my hand. No creaks, no light. From a hidden compartment in my old, outdated briefcase, I retrieved my tools. Ceramic microphones, less than a centimeter wide, disguised as vent covers, light fixture screws, the seams in the crown molding. I placed them all in less than an hour. The wires fed into a concealed panel in the hallway closet, something I'd built into the house the day we bought it, a just-in-case. Now, I was just updating the battlefield.
By morning, I had live audio feeds, signal jammers tested, and motion sensors active. Old habits didn't just return. They woke up like sleeping wolves, hungry and sharp. Lily found me on the back porch with a black coffee and a notepad I was pretending to write in. She sat close, but quiet. "Mom says you're staying for a while?" "Yes." She looked down, twisting her fingers. "Is Jason staying too?" I didn't answer immediately. "Do you want him to stay?" She shook her head, hesitated, then pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pajama pocket. A child's drawing in waxy crayon. Crooked lines, rushed. One figure was her, another, Natalie, a third labeled Jason with a gun in his hand, a fourth labeled Daddy with a red circle around his chest. I held that piece of paper, and it wasn't shock I felt. It was a cold, confirming dread. Children draw what they cannot say. I folded the paper, tucked it into my notebook, and kissed her forehead. "It's just a game, sweetheart. We're playing a game." Later that day, I ran Jason's alias through an old tracing program. The answer came back fast. Too fast. 2 assault convictions, 1 sealed case with a DEA confidential marker. His last known employer was an auto shop that didn't exist on any map. A ghost firm. The deeper I dug, the more it stank. Jason wasn't just an aggressive freeloader. He was connected to a group moving small-batch narcotics through a network of storefronts, wellness clinics, laundromats in quiet suburbs. And Natalie had opened just such a wellness clinic 2 months ago. No license, just a front for washing dirty money. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a business plan. And I was going to bankrupt them both. The school nurse met me with that mask they all wear. The tight smile, the lifted brows, the performance of concern. She led me to a small room with a tissue box cover and a poster about germs. "She said she fell," the nurse said, opening a file, "on the steps near the gym." "That's what happened," I said, my voice flat.
She hesitated. "There are steps there, yes, but the bruising isn't consistent." She handed me a photograph. My daughter's back. 2 dark parallel bruises. Too perfect, too flat to be from a fall. The unmistakable imprint of a belt. Or a hand. "I know the difference between an accident and a message," I said, my voice quiet and low. She didn't respond, just closed the folder as if it were radioactive, and mentioned she'd be obligated to file if it happened again. I'd heard that before. Everyone's brave until the paperwork starts. I kissed Lily before I left, promised to pick her up after school. She smiled, but her eyes were empty. Back home, I noticed the pressure was slightly low on Natalie's front right tire. A perfect excuse. I slid under the car, and under the chassis, I fixed a magnetic audio bug. A second in the trunk lining, a third under the dash. I synced them to my phone, pretending to check the valve stem cap. She didn't even ask what I was doing, just yelled from the porch, "I'll be late tonight, double session." I told her to take her time. That evening, I listened. At 7:12 p.m., she made the call. Her voice was quiet, measured. Jason, listen, he's acting strange. No, he hasn't said anything, but he's watching me. A pause. I could hear the hum of an engine, the tap of a fingernail on a steering wheel. I don't know what he knows, but tomorrow, 10 p.m., we do it. He'll be asleep. Make it look like a break-in. Another pause. Then her voice, cold as a surgeon's knife. And Jason, if the kid sees something, she can't be here either. The air left my lungs in one quiet push. I didn't flinch. I just sat in the dark and listened to my wife sentence our daughter to death with the same calm she used to order a pizza.
They thought I was living in their world, playing house, but I was treating every square inch of the property as a combat zone. The attic became my armory. In the voids between the beams, I hid 2 Glock 19s, threaded for suppressors. Box magazines in a sealed container labeled Xmas lights. In a niche under the stairs, I secured an M4 in a guitar case no one had opened since 2019. I reactivated the old security system, routed through a hidden cable in the TV box. They thought the cameras were dead. I watched them walk through the rooms like tourists in a museum. Every window had a sensor. Every door sent a silent alert to my watch. The back patio had a pressure plate that would instantly send a beacon to my burn phone. They weren't entering a home. They were entering a perimeter. That weekend, I taught Lily an old game I used to teach recruits. Find the safe spot. I showed her the hiding places, the crawl spaces. I told her we were playing spies. She laughed. It was a game. Every spot was marked with a faint UV sticker, only visible under the light of my keychain. She didn't ask why. She just said, "I like this game, Daddy." When she was asleep, I sat in the dark garage with the safe open. Inside, a SIG P226, a burn phone, 3 sets of documents, and a folded photograph of Clara, my first wife. Clara died on a botched extraction in Tripoli. She bled out on a tarmac while I held her hand and lied, saying the evac was 5 minutes out. After that, I walked away from it all. The agency, the contracts, the ghosts. I buried it. Lily was my anchor, my reason to be soft and slow. But softness is vulnerability, and slowness is a death sentence. Natalie had made her choice. She hadn't just cheated and lied, she had conspired. And I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to make them regret the day they ever whispered my name. At 10:42 p.m., I poured a drink I had no intention of touching and replayed the recording. Her voice was calm, like she'd rehearsed it a dozen times. Make it look like a break-in. He suspects nothing. And Jason, stupid, brutal Jason, had replied with that special brand of casual cruelty that chills the blood. If the kid sees something, she's gone too. I sat in the dark, letting the words echo. They were coming tomorrow, but I wasn't sleeping tonight.
The steak was perfect. Medium rare, with garlic butter sizzling on a cast iron skillet, a sprig of rosemary on top. She placed it on the plate like she was shooting for a magazine, centered perfectly. Wine breathed in a decanter. Candlelight danced in her eyes as if nothing was wrong, as if this wasn't the Last Supper. "Here we are," she said, bestowing that soft smile I'd once believed in. "I thought we needed a reset. Just us." I nodded and pulled out my chair. The wood scraped the floor louder than I intended. She didn't flinch, pouring the wine with a confident, practiced motion. Her dress was a little tighter than usual, lips freshly painted. It was all a performance. She raised her glass. "To new beginnings."
I clinked my glass against hers, but I drank to tomorrow. Her jaw tensed for a fraction of a second. I saw it. I always see it. She laughed, a tight, strained sound. You won't say what that means? Not yet, I said, cutting into the meat. We talked about nothing after that. The neighbors' new fence, a yoga class, a show we should watch. I nodded, I smiled. Every word out of her mouth was just noise, static on a frequency I was no longer tuned to. After dinner, she cleared the plates. I have to call my sister, another meltdown. She's so dramatic lately. Take your time, I said. She kissed my cheek with exactly the right amount of pressure to sell the lie, and walked out of the house, wineglass in hand. I waited exactly 6 seconds, tapped my watch twice. In the garage, a drone hidden in a plastic tub labeled lawn fertilizer whirred to life silently and lifted off. The feed showed her getting into her car and driving away. Her sister had nothing to do with it. I went back to the living room, turned on the news for show, but my eyes were on the grid of 12 camera feeds. Every door was signaled, every corridor pre-sighted. I walked the house, checking the final traps. Pressure plates that would release compressed air, activating the defense grid. A non-lethal turret above the laundry door with rubber-coated rounds designed to disorient, not kill. A light tunnel. A narrow hallway rigged with 3 magnesium flares that would ignite if an infrared beam was broken.
They weren't walking into a house. They were walking into a memory I'd built from shrapnel and scars. At 9:47 p.m., I was already in bed. Lights off, facing the wall. Everything as it should be. At 9:57 p.m., they came. First, the back patio door. No shatter of glass, just a quiet click of a picked lock. Second, the hallway window, slid up without a sound. Third, the laundry chute, a direct path into the basement. 3 figures. One of them was Jason. They moved like amateurs pretending to be pros. Quiet steps, hand signals, gear they didn't know how to use. They forgot one thing. This wasn't a breach. It was an invitation. The first one stepped onto the kitchen rug. The pressure plate engaged. 5 seconds of silence. Then the turret above the cabinet hissed and fired 3 short bursts. 2 to the torso, 1 to the thigh. He went down, gasping for air. The second one bent to help him. Mistake. He stepped into the light tunnel. The magnesium flares ignited. White, blinding light. Disorientation. A choked cry. Jason pushed past them, heading for the stairs. He had a weapon. He was the point. But he didn't know I was already waiting for him at the top. I stepped out of the bedroom. Took 1 step down. He froze. His gun came up too slow. Mine didn't. A single shot. His knee exploded. He screamed, tumbling down the stairs like a sack of meat. I walked down after him. No hurry, no adrenaline. Just cold, pure calculus. He tried to push himself up. I kicked his weapon away. It skittered across the hardwood. Remember what you said? My voice was low, almost conversational. If the kids see something, she's gone too. He spat blood, tried to form a word. Crawl, I commanded. He hesitated. I fired into the floor, an inch from his hand. He crawled. He dragged himself into the living room, leaving a dark smear on the floor. She was standing in the doorway, mouth open, eyes wide, hair wet from the shower, phone in her hand. Her wineglass dropped, shattering on the floor. She screamed, fell to her knees beside him. Jason! Oh my God, Jason! I walked in slowly, rifle in one hand, plastic zip ties in the other. She looked up at me, her eyes wild, unrecognizable. You did this? Her voice was a tremulous wire. I didn't answer. I grabbed her wrist, twisted it behind her back, and cinched the tie so tight the plastic dug into her skin. She kicked, she cursed, she screamed my name as if it still held power over me. "You said I was next," I whispered, my voice cold and flat in her ear. But I was first. First to be lied to, first to bleed, and I'll be the one to bury what's left. I sat her next to Jason, whose breathing was already becoming ragged. "You wanted it messy?" I said. "Smile." I stepped back, pulled out the burn phone, dialed the number I'd memorized. A calm voice answered. "Ready?" "It's done. Initiate glass door. 6 minutes." I hung up. They were already on the way. The van pulled up quietly. No markings, matte gray. No sirens, no shouts. Just one crisp knock on the back patio door. 3 short, 1 long. I nodded. 2 men in black jackets, no insignia, no names, entered. One cuffed Natalie's wrists to a belt loop and led her out. No questions, no rights recited, just a black bag and silence. Jason was already gone. A 3rd body for the morgue that night. The others hadn't survived the initial engagement. The cleanup was swift, clinical. The neighbors would be told it was a gas leak, hence the shaking, the noise, the holes, the blood. It was all gone by morning, handled by a 3-person crew. They led her through the garden she never watered, past the rosebush she'd lied about planting. She wasn't screaming anymore, not begging, just staring straight ahead, as if not blinking would make it all not real. I didn't watch her go.
2 weeks later, I sat behind a one-way mirror in a room that smelled of bleach and secrets. My suit jacket was too tight in the shoulders. Across from me, she sat in restraints, wrists cuffed to the table, ankles bolted to the floor. Her hair was darker, dyed, either so she wouldn't be recognized or so she wouldn't have to see her own reflection. 13 days without daylight. She looked up. I did not. I read the charges from the commission transcript. Agents, analysts, lawyers. No emotion, no pauses. The facts: narcotics, fraud, conspiracy. Her voice on the tapes, her face on the camera feeds. The photos of my daughter's bruises documented by 3 separate institutions. They asked if I wanted to make a personal victim impact statement for the official record. I declined. When I stood to leave, she didn't say my name. She didn't call out. She just watched, as if hoping I'd turn around. I didn't turn around. She was processed under Directive 7F, a closed federal statute for civilian accomplices in domestic trafficking networks. No press, no trial, no appeals. She would simply disappear. That was the whole point. But with Lily, it was different. I picked her up from school for the last time. She ran to me as if nothing had happened, as if the last few weeks were just a bad dream. I held her tighter than I ever had before. We drove north, past the highways, past the signs, past everything that was behind us. My sister lived in a town where the hardware store still had a creaky wooden floor, and the diner still let you leave your keys at the counter. She had a way of turning pain into patience, with a quiet voice and a soft gaze. She met us on the porch without questions, just hugs and the smell of cinnamon from the stove. I unpacked Lily's suitcase in the guest room that smelled of lavender. I showed her the nightlight. I tucked her in. She looked at me with the same eyes I'd gazed into on the day she was born, eyes that deserved none of this. "You'll stay?" she whispered. I kissed her forehead. "I'm always right here." I walked out and closed the door before she could see me break.
I left before dawn. No goodbyes. I didn't want to hear the questions. In the guest house, I found an old photo tucked in a drawer. Our wedding. Champagne flutes, her in white, me in the only tux I'd ever owned. The picture was cracked,
warped by time. I held it over the fireplace grate a second too long. The flame caught the edge. Her face blackened faster than mine. By the time the photo curled into ash, the man in that picture was gone. She didn't kill him. I buried him myself. I packed light, a backpack, a rifle, a burn phone. In my wallet, one new ID, Carter Vale Logistics Consultant. Issued last year, never used. No ties, no past. I slung the rifle over my shoulder and walked out into the gray morning mist. The door to the guest house creaked shut behind me. I didn't lock it. There was nothing left in there to protect. I walked past the tree line, past the fence I'd built to keep the coyotes out, past the last place I could remember her smell. I wasn't her husband anymore. I wasn't quite a father. I was just a ghost walking into the next war. They thought they broke me, but I wasn't breakable. I was just waiting for the right reason. They say the past is a foreign country. They're wrong. It's a weapon. It's a set of skills sleeping under your skin, waiting for the one phone call that tells them to wake up. You can try to bury it. You can build a life on top of it. You can pretend it's not who you are anymore. But when the people you're supposed to trust decide that your child is collateral damage, that your love is a currency to be stolen, that's when you learn that some lines aren't meant to be crossed. And if they are, there's no law, no lawyer, no court that can deliver the justice you need. Sometimes you have to become the judgment you want to see in the world. It doesn't make you a hero. It just makes you the last thing standing between the darkness and the light. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of that one. It's a heavy story, I know. It makes you think about what you're truly capable of when pushed to the absolute edge. Let me know in the comments, what's the most surprising betrayal you've ever witnessed, or what would your line in the sand be? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the choices that define us. I'll see you in the next one.